In our headlines on this Tuesday afternoon, January 9th, here in South Korea. The latest findings by the Bank of Korea show the country's current account remained in the black in November for the 7th month in a row amid greater exports of chips and cars. Meanwhile, the world's largest trade show, the Consumer Electronics Show, opens this week in Las Vegas for its 58th edition, with artificial intelligence headlining this year's event. Elsewhere, the armed conflict between the Palestinian militant group Hamas and Israel appears to be widening as the Lebanese militant group Hezbollah claims an Israeli attack has killed a senior official. Seoul Central Bank says Korea's current account posted a surplus for the 7th month in a row in November amid expanded exports of chips and cars. Our An Sung-jin starts us off.
South Korea's current account balance for November last year saw surplus yet again on the back of improving exports. According to preliminary data released by the Bank of Korea on Tuesday, the current account balance saw monthly surplus for the 7th consecutive month, with the surplus for November standing at $4.06 billion. The goods account saw a surplus of $7 billion in November, nearly $2 billion higher than the month before, as exports saw strong performance and imports fell. Exports saw an on-year increase of 7% on the back of an improvement in the semiconductor industry and a recovery in trade with China.
Automobile exports continued their strong performance, and semiconductor exports saw a hike, recording a 10.8% on-year increase, the first on-year increase since July 2022.
In terms of region, exports to U.S. rose by 24.7% compared to the year before, while exports to both Japan and Southeast Asia increased by 11%. Imports fell by 8% compared to the previous year on a drop in fossil fuel prices. Meanwhile, a services account which tracks the inflow and outflow of business services, tourism, and transportation recorded a $2.13 billion deficit. The widening deficit compared to October is largely attributed to fewer tourists from Southeast Asia and China, combined with more Koreans traveling and spending money abroad. The accumulated current account balance surplus from January to November last year is $27.4 billion, which is $300 million more than for the same period in 2022. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
Also on the local front, new findings show the cost of leisure here in Korea posted its biggest jump in almost 30 years. According to Statistics Korea, the related price index soared 3.7% on year. Sports events, overseas group tours, photo services and singing rooms also significant price hikes. Fees for amusement parks and those for performing arts, as well as related lessons, also rose more than 5%. In addition, portable multimedia devices such as tablet PCs marked a price increase of 17.9%. Preliminary earnings calculations by Samsung Electronics point to the company's lowest annual operating profit in well over a decade last year. Our Park Go-nu has details.
South Korean tech giant Samsung Electronics saw its lowest annual operating profits in 15 years in 2023. According to preliminary data revealed by the company on Tuesday, operating profits came to 6.54 trillion won, or around $5 billion, a drop of 84.92% from the year before. It's the lowest that yearly operating profits have fallen since 2008, which was attributed to sluggish semiconductor performance as memory chip prices plunged during the year. Samsung's Device Solutions division that manages its chip business saw a cumulative deficit of approximately $9.1 billion from the first to third quarter last year. Operating profits started to improve in quarter 4 due to a reduction in production and chip inventories. Meanwhile, despite on-quarter operating profits for quarters 1 to 3 last year, quarter 4 saw a drop on year. In the fourth quarter alone, operating profits fell around 35% compared to the year before, to around $2.1 billion, falling short of the London Stock Exchange Group's smart estimate of around $2.8 billion. But according to an analyst at Japanese financial services firm Daiwa Capital Markets, a surge in chip prices seen since quarter 4 last year is expected to continue into 2024, meaning an earnings rebound for chip makers in the near future. Park Go-nu, Arirang News.
And we are counting down the hours to the world's largest trade show in Las Vegas. The Consumer Electronics Show marks its 58th edition this year. And according to organizers, artificial intelligence is headlining this year's event. Our business correspondent Shin Hae-young has a preview.
The world's largest tech show, the Consumer Electronics Show, where visitors can be among the first to experience global tech trends, is about to kick off in Las Vegas on Tuesday local time. Under the theme of All Together, All On, this year's trade show focuses on using innovative technology to tackle global issues. The combined exhibition area covers a vast space of over 240,000 square meters, a 30% increase from last year. Some 3,500 companies from 150 countries are taking part. From South Korea, around 760 companies, including startups and major players like LG Electronics, Samsung Electronics, Hyundai Motor Group, and SK, will showcase their latest cutting-edge technologies. This makes Korea the third largest country in terms of participation after the US and China. At CES 2024, AI developments in a variety of fields, including home appliances, healthcare, and automotive, are expected to take center stage. Ahead of the opening, South Korea's tech giants unveiled a range of next-generation TVs. LG Electronics presented the world's first wireless transparent OLED TV, the LG Signature OLED T. When turned up, it's practically invisible, blending into the surroundings and making the space feel bigger. And you can see beyond the screen and move it freely thanks to its transparent screen and wireless technology. It is complemented by top-notch picture quality and LG OLED, powered by the new Alpha 11 AI processor. Samsung Electronics revealed its latest QLED and micro-LED TVs. The announcement also conveyed plans to open what the firm calls the era of AI screen, with the introduction of a next-generation AI processor set to redefine the perception of smart display capabilities.
Samsung's AI screen is powered by on-device AI technology. We will be the centerpiece of your AI home, connecting all your devices to offer more flexible and diverse lifestyle with no boundaries on or off screen.
With curiosity about how AI will break down barriers in various industries, the four-day event is expected to attract over 130,000 people from around the world. Shin Hae-young, Arirang News.
Global oil prices lost much ground on Monday in response to Saudi Arabia's intentions to cut crude costs in February. Now, prices of West Texas Intermediate plunged over 4%, marking its greatest loss since November, while Brent crude surrendered 3.4%. Pundits reportedly believe these latest events stand as proof that lower global oil demand is offsetting the potential repercussions of the widening violence in the Middle East that had pushed prices up by 2% last week. The year 2024 will be one of rebuilding livelihoods by removing barriers among government agencies and those with the people. Now, this is according to President Yoon during his first cabinet meeting for the year earlier on this Tuesday. Highlighting the fresh format of policy briefings that included members of the public last week, President Yoon called on his administration to listen to and to act upon the concerns raised by citizens to bring about tangible change that can be felt in daily lives. He also urged safety precautions and pan-government efforts to ensure an enjoyable Winter Youth Olympics set to start next Friday in Gangwon-do province with some 1,900 participants from 18 countries. On the security front, South Korea has rendered void buffer zones created under a military pact with North Korea back in 2018 amid Pyongyang's live fire drills into the region in recent times. Our Peregrine reports.
On September 19, 2018, the two Koreas signed an inter-Korean military agreement that set up buffer zones for land, air, and sea to reduce tensions and prevent accidental clashes. But following the North's recent provocations, the South Korean military officially declared on Monday that these zones outlined in the agreement are no longer effective.
North Korea has breached the September 19 military agreement more than 3,000 times. And over the last 3 days, it has fired artillery shells in the West Sea. As a result, the zone where all hostile activities are banned no longer exists.
The Joint Chiefs of Staff also said the military will not respond to every provocation initiated by North Korea, and instead conduct firing exercises according to its own schedule. The maritime buffer zone in the West Sea extends 135 kilometers. That's 85 kilometers south of the NLL, or the northern limit line that separates the two Koreas, and 50 kilometers north of the line. There is also a separate buffer zone in the East Sea that spans 80 kilometers. Provocative actions are prohibited in these zones, including firing artillery shells and coastal guns. The North had already said last November that it's withdrawing from the pact, and it has rebuilt guard posts inside the DMZ. With South Korea's announcement on Monday, the agreement is now practically scrapped. This comes after the South Korean military detected around 90 artillery shots by the North on Sunday afternoon. North Korea also fired over 200 shells on Friday and 60 on Saturday. However, in an attempt to shame the South Korean military's detection capabilities, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's sister, Kim Yo-jong, claimed the North had not fired a single shell on Saturday, but instead detonated explosives simulating the sound of artillery fire. The South Korean military immediately dismissed the statement, calling it a, quote, comedy-like propaganda. In fact, according to military sources, the South Korean military detected the North blowing up explosives only 10 times before and after Saturday's shelling, which shows the North's claims are not true. An expert says the intention behind North Korea's latest provocation is to grab local and international headlines.
In a world distracted by Gaza and Ukraine, that North Korea is saying we're still here and we're starting the year with these types of artillery rounds. That garners a lot of international attention.
plunge, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, in the Middle East, a senior Hezbollah official was reportedly targeted in an Israeli strike against the Lebanese militant group in southern Lebanon. And amid fears that the war in Gaza is widening, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu raised greater concern by projecting a prolonged military operation. Our Ising has the latest.
Hezbollah says one of its top-ranking commanders has been killed in an Israeli attack in southern Lebanon. Lebanon state media said Wissam Tawil, who is considered one of the most prominent figures in the Lebanese militant group, was killed in an Israeli airstrike that targeted a car that the commander was in. According to AFP, Tawil had a leading role in managing Hezbollah's operations in the south of Lebanon. However, Israel did not comment on the attack, but it did say it had hit Hezbollah targets in response to cross-border attacks. Regarding the war in Gaza Strip, the office of the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu released a joint statement from both the Prime Minister and Defense Chief Yoav Gallant, where the two stressed that the war there would not end anytime soon and that it would continue for many months. They also called for international support in order for them to continue the fighting in Gaza. Speaking to the New York Times, Israel Defense Forces spokesperson Daniel Hagari said its military has begun a new, less intensive phase in its war against Hamas in Gaza. He added that the new phase means fewer ground troops and airstrikes. The comments came hours before U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken arrived in Israel to discuss the transition to the next phase in fighting and preventing the conflict from spreading. Meanwhile, Blinken sent a message warning to the Houthi militants in Yemen, saying they will face consequences for continued attacks on ships in the Red Sea. Blinken told reporters Monday in Saudi Arabia that some 40 countries have called on Houthis to stop their attacks. The top American diplomat also made stops in Turkey, Greece, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates in quick succession before his visit to Israel. Ising-jae, Arirang News.
Over in Ukraine, 3 cities and 1 industrial region were the targets of Russian missile and drone assaults on Monday. 4 people lost their lives, while at least 38 were injured in the attacks against residential buildings and infrastructure, according to Ukrainian authorities. Now, Moscow, for its part, claims the attacks were targeted at military industrial facilities. Russia's airstrikes have killed 11 Ukrainians, including 5 children, this past weekend. In other news, the fate of America's first moon mission in 50 years has been rendered uncertain as the lunar lander built by a private U.S. company suffers a number of, quote, critical setbacks. Our Cho Soo-young has details.
The world's first private moon landing craft, Peregrine lunar lander, is facing a serious technical problem. On Monday local time, Astrobotic, the U.S. firm that built the spacecraft, stated that it has a problem with the propulsion system, causing a significant loss of fuel. They said the situation is serious enough for them to consider changing the mission goals. Peregrine was launched at 2:18 a.m. on Monday from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida on a Vulcan rocket. This 1.2-ton craft was scheduled to land on the moon on the 23rd of February. But about 7 hours after the launch, an issue was discovered where the solar panels were not properly facing the sun, so couldn't properly charge the onboard battery. Astrobotic scientists managed to fix this issue, but also confirmed there was another problem: fuel loss. The Peregrine lunar lander carries various cargo, including scientific instruments by the U.S. space agency NASA to study the lunar surface composition and radiation, as well as a small exploration robot the size of a shoebox developed by Carnegie Mellon University. NASA is just a customer in this project, though, and is not in charge. It paid $108 million for Peregrine to carry its equipment. If the spacecraft's landing is successful, it will be the world's first private lunar exploration to make a controlled landing on the moon and the first U.S. soft landing on the moon since Apollo 17 in 1972. Cho Soo-young, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, back on the local front, the Yoon administration's plan to better promote Korea's space endeavours is taking tangible shape as the parliament is poised to vote on a bill that paves a path to the establishment of a new related agency. Our National Assembly correspondent Lee Si-hoo reports.
South Korea is one step closer to launching a new space agency. The National Assembly Science and ICT Committee on Monday passed bills to establish a new space agency that the Science Ministry has dubbed the Korea Aerospace Administration, or KASA. The bills passed are the Special Act for the establishment and operation of the agency and the revision to the existing Space Development Promotion Act. According to the bills, the new space agency will carry out policymaking, industry promotion, international cooperation, and more in the field of aerospace. It will start with fewer than 300 personnel but will grow its size through active recruitment. The agency will fall under the Ministry of Science and ICT and will also be monitored by the National Space Committee. The existing Korea Aerospace Research Institute and Korea Astronomy and Space Science Institute will now belong to the new agency, but the physical transfer of the institutions will require approval by the parliament. Both KARI and KASA will carry out research and development. The two main parties had conflicting views on this, with the ruling People Power Party insisting the space agency should carry out R&D projects that KARI is unable to, and the main opposition Democratic Party opposing this idea, saying it would create unnecessary overlap. The lawmakers eventually agreed to allow KARI to carry out its existing research and KASA to carry out other R&D projects. If the bills are approved at the plenary session on Tuesday, the space agency in Sacheon, Gyeongsangnam-do Province could start operations as early as May. Lee Si-hoo, Arirang News.
Let's take a look at the latest news in the world now. In the U.S., Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin is under scrutiny for his failure to disclose his hospitalization to President Joe Biden and the Pentagon for several days. The Pentagon said that Austin resumed his full duties from his hospital bed on Friday evening after being in intensive care. Amid growing criticism of Austin for lack of transparency in notifying the chain of command, the White House said Monday that it will review the situation. National Security Council spokesman John Kirby said Monday that there is no plan for anything other than for Secretary Austin to stay in the job. However, a number of Republicans, including former President Donald Trump, have called for Austin to be sacked. 70-year-old Austin was admitted to intensive care at Walter Reed Military Hospital on January 1st, but he was the fourth before he made the White House aware of his condition. Austin is believed to be still in hospital. Pope Francis on Monday called for a universal ban on the practice of surrogate motherhood, condemning commercialization of pregnancy in his annual address to the Holy See's diplomatic corps. In his 45-minute address to Vatican-accredited diplomats, 87-year-old Pope Francis called for a global ban on surrogacy to prohibit the practice universally. He described surrogacy as a deplorable act, adding that the child is a gift and never the basis of a commercial contract, and that it represents a grave violation of the dignity of the woman and the child involved. In Switzerland, former Gambian Interior Minister Ousmane Sonko went on trial for crimes against humanity on Monday. Sonko faces charges including murder, multiple rapes and torture committed between 2000 and 2016. Swiss campaign group Trial International filed a complaint against him after collecting evidence along with other NGOs, with the case going ahead under the principle of universal jurisdiction for grave crimes. 9 Gambian plaintiffs will travel to the Swiss court to testify. 54-year-old Sonko fled to Switzerland in 2016 after Gambian dictator Yahya Jammeh lost power. According to the Human Rights Watch, Jammeh was responsible for widespread abuses, including forced disappearances and extrajudicial killings. Regarded as one of the world's football greats, Franz Beckenbauer died on Sunday at the age of 78. Nicknamed Der Kaiser, Beckenbauer captained the German national team to a World Cup victory in 1974 and returned as manager in 1990 to win the tournament again. The former defender spent the majority of his club career at German giants Bayern Munich in the 60s and 70s, before stints at New York Cosmos and Hamburger SV. Widespread tributes paid to Beckenbauer included from German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, who said he was not only one of Germany's greatest footballers, but also created excitement for German football for generations. Kim Seong, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. A massive winter storm has unleashed blizzard conditions in much of Korea, with more forecasts over the course of the day. Seoul could have snowfall unseen in 14 years, with a heavy snow advisory being issued. The winter storm could dump snow in the capital area in Gangwon-do through tonight, while the south will see heavy snow from this afternoon into tomorrow at dawn. Mountainous regions in Gangwon-do province could see more than 20 centimeters of snowfall. The central areas in Gyeongsang-Pukto province could receive up to 15 centimeters of snow through tomorrow. Take it easy on the road, take public transportation, or avoid traveling unless it's absolutely necessary. Afternoon temperatures, meanwhile, are slightly higher than yesterday afternoon. But at least this round of wintry precipitation will not bring any significant drop in temperatures. It will stay warmer than norms for the next few days. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions. And those are the top stories at this hour here in Korea. Coming up right after this break is our daily panel session, so do stay with us. Thank you for now.